All right. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time this evening. Tonight, I step away from politics and even my typical solo show to kick off a new series, Dad Talk Roundtable. Regular audience members will know that Fridays, I try and invite dads on to discuss what is important to them as a father. I reserve 7:30 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. to accommodate the fellow dads out there. But I'm taking this a step further. This series will air on the second Monday of each month at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Instead of just one dad, I'll invite several who I think are solid voices as men, husbands, and fathers. Together, we'll sort out the good and the bad, and with any luck, we'll inspire other men out there to be the best they can be. Joining me tonight, Adam Coleman, Tyler Janke, and Jacob Winograd. So let's bring them in and get this show going. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good.
Doing well.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right into this. I've invited all three of you guys on to talk about dad stuff, man stuff, husband stuff. The goal of the show is literally to inspire men out there. I think there are many voices out there which are not very inspiring. There's a lot of voices out there that want to beat up on women and all this other crazy stuff. And I'm like, maybe we just raise dad voices. Maybe we get some dads together and we just have a chit chat about things from our perspective. And then other men can watch and then they can say, wow, that's a great idea. Or just walk away feeling a little bit better about themselves. To kick it off, I've got Adam to my right, if I'm looking at the screen. And then I've got Tyler below me, and then Jacob in the square cat corner to me. So we'll just kind of kick it off. We'll go around. We'll go Adam, and then Jacob, and then Tyler. Just kind of introduce yourselves. talk about kind of like, whatever it is that you feel the audience should know about you. Take it away, Adam.
Yeah, my name is Adam Coleman. I'm the author of 2 books, Black Victim, Black Victor, and my newest book came out this April, Children We Left Behind. Um, I write for the New York Post as often as I can, and have my own Substack on Twitter and all that, written for multiple publications. And right now I'm trying to get more into video work. Speaking of like family and marriage, I actually have a short documentary that I made with my wife and I. It's called Without Borders. It's a travel love story. So they can check it out, Wrong Speak Media. If you go on YouTube, look up Wrong Speak Media, and you'll find it there. Yeah, I mean I feel like I've done a ton of stuff, so that's the that's the short version.
Awesome. Busy man.
Yeah.
Let's hear what you got there, Jacob.
Yeah, so my name's Jacob. I am the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, which is a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute. It's part of our Christians for Liberty network. I also routinely host our live show, which is the LCI Green Room. And I'm not yet an author, although I have been working with LCI on a couple of books, which will be coming out next year. So I guess future author, which will be a first for me. The one book is going to be actually the second edition of this one right here, which is Faith Seeking Freedom, Libertarian Christian Answers to Tough Questions. But yeah, obviously, as the name implies, we are Christians trying to make the case for a free society. If you want to find out more about us, you can just go to libertarianchristians.com.
Awesome. Tyler.
I guess I'm up. I'm Tyler Janke. It's pronounced different than it looks. I'm a family law attorney, husband, 4 kids, almost all out of the nest by now. I have a show called LPR. It formerly was Libertarian Podcast Review. I'm kind of not divorcing myself from the libertarians, but just kind of trying to rebrand to reach a more, because LPR or Libertarian Podcast Review was a little bit too niche. Mm-hmm. So what do? I do legal analysis. I watch videos. Today I watched one with Nick and Piers Morgan. It was bad on all accounts. One thing we could just take in, first of all, is don't take your marriage advice from a 30-year-old gentleman. That's one thing. But other than that, I just like to talk and riff and do whatever. So my main thing is family law. So anytime something like that comes up, I take advantage of that and try to do legal analysis with that.
Awesome. And then I am your humble host, or perhaps maybe not so humble, but I try. DL. I don't have any books, although I've thought about it, but I don't know if I have the wherewithal to sit down and write a whole book, although it is kind of an interesting thought, and I can respect anybody that does. But I do a podcast. Right now I'm on sabbatical to take care of some family stuff, just kind of maintenance the family, kind of reorganize a little bit, get things moving along. And otherwise, I work for corporate America, and I am a dad. That's it. Not a whole lot about me. I like to get on the internet and run my mouth about politics. And I'd also talk about culture and family and being a man and a husband. And so here we are. Now, I will say this. Adam has been on the show before on my series Dad Talk, where I bring on individual dads. And what I do is I bring on a dad. It could be any dad. You don't have to be an author. You don't have to be a podcast bro. You could just be a regular dad who happens to have access to, a laptop with a camera on it. And we'll bring you on, or I bring you on, and then we talk about what's important to you as a dad. And I've had a bunch of dads talk about everything from mental health to, challenges that they've had with their children to all over the place. Just tons and tons of topics. It's been great conversations. I've also had Tyler as well on, so that was great. So I'll have to get Jacob on. I had to apologize to him earlier because I didn't realize until like earlier today. I was like, oh wait a minute, I've never had him on. But tonight's topic, very simple, basically a 2-part topic. What I wish I had known before becoming a husband and then also a father. And I thought this would be a great way to kind of kick off this new series. So I don't know who wants to jump in and go first, but who's ready to tell all the men out there everything they need to know about being a father or a husband? Which one of you guys? Come on now.
Let me start by just mentioning one thing I didn't know was that libertarians were going to hold my kids hostage for $1. Other than that, I'd let Jacob go first. He wanted to talk.
Oh boy. Actually, it's for a penny, I thought, but I
Oh,
don't know.
shit. There we go.
The amount is ever in flux, it
Okay.
seems.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, gosh, I got married young. I would have got married even younger, but our parents wouldn't let us. But I got married at 20 and now have 5 kids and I'm 33. So it's been pretty intense. Like, I feel like there's so much that I could say that like I wish I knew and that I didn't realize I know. I think the main thing is just like any young person, you don't realize how much there is to learn. I think there's something good about like being young and wanting to have kids and and have a family. So I don't want to ever like I'm someone who advocates for that. But I think I would advocate for that, but also just kind of reminding people that like, hey, like everything you think right now, you're probably going to think at least somewhat differently in 10 years, right? Just like understand that you're going to evolve, you're going to make mistakes and be open to that. Because I think when I was young and my wife and I got married and planned on having kids, we were so sure that we were going to do so much better than our parents. We both came from broken families. Both of our parents were divorced before we got married, and we were like, well, we're going to do so much better than them, right? On every front. And don't get me wrong, like I think we did start out with some things that were right, but we were definitely over cocky, overconfident in sort of the challenge of raising children. And we definitely, I think the main reason why is you learn this is that you think that if you just like don't expose your kids to certain things, you think that if you like that it's all nurture, right? Like and then you realize quickly that each kid is different and is going to have different struggles, and it doesn't matter what environment you do, some kids are just going to have a propensity towards certain things and you have to adapt. So I guess that's a kind of basic opening summation of the meta lesson
Right.
of sort of like what I wish I knew.
How far apart are your 5 kids, if you don't mind?
They're pretty much 2 to 2.5 years apart each.
Okay.
So yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Who's next here? We'll dive into some more. We'll tell some stories and whatnot.
Let Adam go. I'll save the oldest for last.
All right.
Well, I also grew up in a broken family situation where my father was not involved in my life whatsoever. So I didn't know anything. So I didn't know what it meant to be a dad or how to be a good father, other than to be the opposite of what my father was. So at the very least, be present.
Mhm.
And then from there, I just wanted to become the father that I thought I would have wanted when I was a kid. But if we are to talk about something specific, which I was able to correct early in my son's life, but it's one of those things like you grow up around it, you think this is the way that you're supposed to do things. But that's putting your hands on your kid. I was spanked probably more than what you would. Everyone has their vision of what spanked means and what it looks like. But I had to deal with that coming from my mother. It's not that I was a bad kid, but you're a kid, you're gonna mess up. And so that was the punishment. And so when my son was very young, I would pop him. But I found myself doing that as like a shortcut, and I didn't like how that felt either. And then even more so, I looked at him and I saw me when I was a kid. And I remembered when I would get hit, I already felt terrible. I knew I messed up. Like, you're already screaming and yelling at me. I knew I messed up. And so hitting felt unnecessary. So what I decided, I didn't tell my son, but what I decided to do was not hit him anymore. And any time that I would have, I just talked to him more. So it's not that he didn't get punished. It's just that if I'm going to discipline him, I need to actually teach him. And what am I teaching him by hitting him? Well, to be scared of me. I don't want my son scared of me, right? I want him to respect me, which he does, right? He's 20 years old now. Thinks very highly of me, is respectful, but he's not scared of me. And so I think there's a big difference there. So if he messes up, which kids are going to mess up, the brains aren't fully developed, right? So we have to teach them, right? Discipleship means to teach. So what are you teaching your kid? If they mess up, let's say if they go to school and they don't do their homework and they get in trouble because they didn't do their homework, what does hitting them teach them, right? Or if you talk to them and ask them, why didn't you do your homework? And then come to find out it's because they feel like they don't know enough in math. And so they're afraid to get it wrong and they didn't do it. And, whatever it might be, their little kid rationality, then that's something you can work on and you can work with. And then you tell them, moving forward, you tell me these things. It's okay if you don't know this. We worked this out. We figured this out. So they're not scared. But hitting them, does that actually teach them how to do math? No. It teaches them to do things in fear of something, fear of some sort of pain coming. But do they learn how to do that math issue? No, right? So it gives them the wrong motivation. And it actually, in my opinion, messes up. It can't, excuse me, it can mess up the relationship. But even with me saying this, it's a very controversial thing to say because, and I wrote an article for Dad Save America about this very thing, because we have a culture where hitting kids is normal. And for the kids who were hit, they grow up and they're fine. They've accepted that they're hit and they love their parents. They don't want to criticize their parents. So they defend being hit. Deep down inside, they know they didn't need it, but they've convinced themselves that they needed it. It's a bit of Stockholm syndrome, right? And so they defend the very people who are supposed to care about them, who put their hands on them unnecessarily because dad or mom had a bad day and they didn't feel like sitting down talking to you. So they just grabbed the belt, hit you for 5 minutes, got their frustration out, and then moved on to the next thing. So my suggestion for someone who's about to become a parent is to think about what you are teaching your child, regardless if it's disciplining them or how you talk to them. All these things matter. How do you want your relationship to be with your child? And what are you teaching them, right? I think we have a punishment culture and not a discipline culture, right? So we actually have to teach our kids stuff. You can hit them all day, right? And see where that gets them, right? And you might luck out and they turn out just fine, right? And we have a lot of that. But trust me, there's a lot of guys who end up in jail, got hit all the time. So would you want to err on the side of caution that maybe you don't want to raise a child who will hate you? I believe the Bible talks about that. So I think if you don't want someone to hate you, you don't hit them. And the last thing I'll say, this is part of my small diatribe. There's no other person that you could ever say that the expression of love is through physical pain. If I said I beat my wife because I love her, you'd be like, no, you're insane. You should go to jail. But you can say, I love my kid. That's why I beat them, to teach them a lesson. But if I want to teach my wife a lesson by getting a belt and telling her next time do the dishes, you would call me an abuser. But we don't say the same thing about adults when they beat kids who have no license, they have no job, they have no income, they can't leave, right? They're stuck there with you. And they don't know any better. And your job is to teach them. But we've turned that into a moment of physical pain. So I'm very much so against it. I started doing it very early on. I didn't like it because I recognized that I was that child and we were all that child. And every child deserves not to be hit. And if you convince yourself that you deserved it when you were a kid because you're just bad, rambunctious kid, just understand that is BS.
Yeah. Could I add something quick to that?
Yeah.
'Cause I really agree and resonate with all that. And like we started out believing in gentle parenting and peaceful parenting, and then we hit like a wall where that wasn't working. And we thought like, and this was like during a time where we were kind of questioning all of our beliefs, because we started out, we were Christian, but we were definitely like more liberal minded, and we were on the political left. And then we were kind of shifting rightward in our theological beliefs, our cultural beliefs. And so I was like, well, maybe this peaceful parenting stuff is like, hippie leftist stuff, and that's why we're having issues at home. And then we kind of deviated from the peaceful parenting model, and then that didn't help matters. It only made things worse. And so we kind of learned that, okay, well, that's worse. We're not going to do that. And it pushed us to then like revisit the peaceful parenting and the not hitting your kids, and realize that like, yeah, like not hitting them is only one step. There's a lot more that goes into it. But another observation, which I think is a lesson that parents need, in like, future parents, people who are thinking about having kids, need to realize, as a piece of advice, which kind of maps on to, my Christian and libertarian beliefs, is that just like as libertarians, we understand that, a free society, that a limited state or no state isn't going to usher in some utopia. Not hitting your kids doesn't mean you're going to have perfect kids. It doesn't mean that the family is going to be without issues. And it doesn't mean that like you might try to do everything right as a parent, and you might still have a child that's struggling with specific disciplinary and sinful behaviors. And I think that the same kind of impulse that leads people to go, well, we need government coercion to solve this societal problem, is at play when people think, well, my kids just shouldn't be acting this way, so I have to hit them. It's like, well, you might be right that your kid shouldn't be acting that way. You need to try to discipline it, but sometimes you have to just accept that your kid might be going through something, and you can't sort of rush the process of them growing out of that behavioral pattern. Like that might be something you have to sit with them and struggle with them, and struggle to figure out how to help them through that for an extended period of time. So it's not about like not hitting your kid is going to create, always be easy, or it's always going to be like that is just step one. And step two is like, recognizing that every kid's different, and yeah, you can do everything right as a parent and still have a kid who listen, we homeschool our kids. We don't expose them to a lot of stuff out in the world. But guess what? Lying and anger and sneaking and things like that, like those are things that, especially if you're a Christian, you know that like they're born with that nature, and it's going to manifest differently in each child. Our job isn't to like, we can't centrally plan our families and our children to like never misbehave and never struggle with things any more than you, like think about you as an adult. Like everyone who's an adult probably realizes that they're still struggling with certain sinful patterns and whatnot, and they have like 20-30 years in their kids. So I think that's a useful add-on to everything you said, which I definitely agree with. And I have kind of like a personal experience that, kind of, I think is a little bit unique, because I know a lot of people who kind of like you, Adam, like adopted, not hitting or peaceful parenting, whatever you want to call it, later. We started with it, then deviated, and then went back.
Yeah. And if I could just add one thing, and he can add his 2 cents. I appreciate you, sharing your perspective. Definitely 1000% what you said. It's not just, oh, don't hit them and they'll just turn out fine. It's like, no, like you have to raise your kid, right? And you have to be patient with them. Like if we understand that our children in many ways are functionally retarded, like we'll give them some grace, because they're going to mess up. They're going to forget stuff, right? You are teaching your children pattern behaviors, right? So you're doing things on repetition, right? So over the years, it no longer becomes an issue. And many of these things that you're talking about, they grow out of. I remember my ex's old nephew. it was like at the age of 11, like he was weird. He was kind of like a weird kid, and he would do anything for attention, and he would just do all types of weird stuff. I swear to you, it was like less than a year later, I saw this kid, and he was like, hey, he was calm. like he, and it was one, he got older, he matured, and he was around other kids who were matured as well. And he calmed down. That kid stuff that he was doing was no longer cool. And just from a young man standpoint, he just matured into being a young man, right? And you can't beat that out of him. You actually got to give him time, right? And you can make fun of him, right? If you playfully make fun of your kids, but like some of that stuff, they just have to grow out of. And we want kids to grow at our pace instead of their pace. So you
Right.
got to be patient with them.
Yep.
Right. Tyler, jump in there on, you can just add on to the current topic. We'll circle back to it if you want to kind of deviate a little bit on, what you wish you had known. We're just kind of free for all at this point.
Yeah, I'll I'll express mine. But DL and I just, when was it? About 2 weeks ago, I came on here and we talked about, it was a video of a mom just whipping the crap out of her son and then grabbing him by the hair. So we had a discussion on that. So if you really want my point of view on that, we went deep into that. Both DL and I saying, that we were spanked. I started to do that with my kids. I will express, well, first of all, Adam, I don't know if you watched Piers Morgan and Nick yet today, but maybe your wife wants to be hit. That was literally a conversation. So,
Wow.
think about that. Okay.
Serious people.
Well, yeah. In Nick's defense, he was citing a study. Okay, let's go into reality, which is when you watch videos like what DL and I did, or what I had, being spanked. By the way, 2 times in school, I went to a private school and I got spanked in 3rd and 7th grade as well. And I wasn't I wasn't dumb. I talked back a lot. That was the problem. And then what happens is a teacher says something to you and you suddenly make the kids laugh. Now it happens all the time. Right. The point is, though, with the spanking, it's never about you doing it in a calm way. It's always the parent that seems to be, frustrated, like you said, getting their frustrations out. Yeah. Did you ever get spanked where, like you're in trouble and then your mom or dad comes back, an hour and a half later? Okay, now we're going to have a spanking. No, right. It was at the time, it was immediate, and it shows that the person in charge couldn't control themselves. So I'm in complete agreement with that. And that's something that we need to obviously. And then you talked about look, just because you don't spank them, perhaps your kids are unruly. You can have a peaceful parenting house, and then every time, give your kid an iPad all the time. I mean, so you're not, it's the behaviors and the things you're teaching them are very important. And some of that goes to my whole thing about what I learned. I was married 10 years, got divorced, 2 kids, got remarried. I adopted my wife's 2 kids, so I have 4 in that direction. And making mistakes and understanding that if you do the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same result. It's a stupid concept, but I had to really realize that with the marriage thing going in. Okay, I've got a new wife. And things are, I can't be making, even though my first one, it was all her fault. We could always, all of us agree on that. Even with that said, you're doing things that are not, the same reactions, the same projections, same little arguments. Learn from those experiences and it'll get you a long way. I have a lot of little things, being a divorce attorney, to see where couples are messing up. But the reality is, for me, at least, and my wife, it's about being on the same page and doing things together. So it's, finances together. It's a team. We're paying up bills together. And I'll say this, especially in this era of X and Twitter and everything else. I use my phone as if all the DMs I'm doing, my wife is reading them. That's just my attitude. She can look through my phone all she wants. Mm-hmm. Some, blankety blank bot whore comes into my DMs. It's deleted. She's blocked. All that kind of stuff. Or even in some of these chats I'm in that are somewhat raucous. Fine, my wife knows who I am, but I'm not flirty. I'm not doing anything that she wouldn't. And what that has done, because there's going to be times in your life, in your marriage, where things aren't going well. And if you've put yourself in a position to be interested when someone taps you during that low time, then you never know what's going to happen. It just doesn't happen with me because I'm not putting myself in those positions.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Because I see that comment go around every so often on social media. People will be like, could you leave your phone with your significant other, or could they go through it, and would you be worried? And I'm like, no, I wouldn't be worried. My wife wouldn't be worried if I went through her phone. We would both probably promptly hand it back because I don't want to deal with all the real estate messages, and she
Yeah.
probably doesn't want to deal with all the nonsense on social media, that I get pinged on. But other than that, yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny because I tell my wife half of what I say on social media anyway. I'm like, oh man, let me tell you what I said today, because I work from home. And so like my interaction with other adults tends to be on social media. So it's like, instead of telling her what happened at the office, I tell her what happened on Twitter, which is not the most exciting.
Yeah, she's like, you don't have to share anymore. We're
Yeah,
good.
yeah. She's like, okay, well, that I've taken a little bit of a back seat on libertarian party matters. So she finds that probably slightly refreshing, because she's not like, okay, what are the libertarians fighting about this time? So there's some of that. But as far as like, I'm going to come back to the spanking, because I think that's a really good topic. What I wish I had known before becoming a husband, though, the level of responsibility that I would be taking on. And let me put it like, so I'm married twice. So I got married and I lasted 5 years, divorced. And then a couple of years later, got remarried. I've been married now about 12, 13 years, somewhere around. I have to go look up the specific date. But over 10 years for sure. And we have a 6-year-old. And it's interesting, today, I do something that I would have never even thought of in my first marriage. And that's, I take personal responsibility for the vibe in my house. And what I mean by that is, I'm not like walking around saying, hey, you're unhappy, you got to be happy. I walk around and I'm like, if I see that somebody's frustrated, I feel like, as the headship of the house, it's my job to kind of help and help, clear a path, if nothing else, for whoever it is. Maybe my wife's having a bad day, maybe my son's having a bad day. And so I do my best to try to just open up a path for them. I don't necessarily, you can't always solve the problem, right? Like men out there, you know what I'm talking about. But I take responsibility for it, just because I'm like, well, what does it mean to be the head of the house? What does it mean to be a leader? Well, it doesn't mean come in and start barking orders. And with my wife, that wouldn't work anyway. But not any more than it would if she barking orders at me. We'll both be independent minded like that. So, so I take very, a lot of personal responsibility in the way that the vibe of the house goes. And I feel like that has really changed me as a husband. Now, I'm not perfect and I still get a lot of things wrong. And, I have to apologize every so often. But I think it's definitely done wonders for me as a husband second time around. And then as a father, I mean, I got a 6-year-old, man. I swear every year it's like a brand new kid almost. It's like I got through 6 years and I'm like, wow, I've got 6 years of experience that are useless for the next year. Maybe not entirely, but it feels that way sometimes, because he can just be so different from one year to the next. And when he was younger, sometimes 1 week to the next. So, but let's circle back to this spanking thing, because I thought that was a very interesting topic. Because if I had a child early on, I'm 47 now. My son was born when I was 41. If I had him in my 20s, he probably would have got spanked all the time, because I was, your typical conservative Republican who believed spare the rod, spoil the child. So I'd have been like, no, you have to spank him, because if you don't spank him, he'll turn out like one of them blue-haired crazies, or he'll turn out into the next serial killer, or, something very scary and something that no parent would want. But these days, what you said, Adam, and I heard it from a different source originally, from a mutual friend, Dave Smith. Tyler and Jacob know him. I don't know if you know who Dave Smith is or not, but he made the same point you did, that if you spank your kid, a lot of people go, yeah, they probably deserve it. But if you're like, yeah, I also spanked my wife because she didn't do the dishes right, they're going to be like, the hell is wrong with you? Right. And he made the point. He was like, your wife maybe your wife can't defend herself that well against you, but far better than your child can. And that was an interesting point that really hit home to me. Now we started out, and he's had one or two spankings. I think you can count them on one hand. And my approach, because I think I had him when I was older, and so that helped temper things a lot. Especially having a failed marriage, and I didn't want to fail the second one. I came into it and I said, all right, let's level set on expectations. And so I was like, he's going to draw on the walls. He's going to tell me a lie. He's going to do this or this or this or this. So there's no reason to be shocked when it happens. And I think that's part of what goes into, and I'm just guessing, but I feel like that's part of what goes into the whole spanking, is that parents are not prepared for what is probably pretty common behavior. And so then you guys were talking about like frustrations and getting angry and letting it out. I think that's one of the reasons why people get angry, is because they haven't level set expectations for common behaviors. My wife's going to be, snippy some days. She's going to be irritable. My son will be irritable. I will definitely be irritable some days, and if we're not level setting, then of course it's going to make us even that much angrier, rather than saying, okay, they're going through something right now. Let's sit down and see if we can't work it out. Yeah. So I thought that was really good to bring out, because one of the things that I've always been frustrated by, and I don't know how you guys feel, and I'd be interested in hearing from you guys. When I first heard about the concept of like peaceful parenting, I ran into some very nasty people. Like one dude on Facebook, he was like, this study proves something. And I read the study and found out he didn't read the study. And I was like, well, the study doesn't prove what you're saying. And he cussed and carried on at me, jumped in DMs, cussed me out, like all this crap. I was like, dude, are you sure you're a peaceful parent? Because you're definitely not a peaceful If you can't handle a peaceful adult, like I'm not even being a jerk. How are you going to handle a child? So I felt like I ran into a lot of people that were just very nasty about it. And I actually didn't want to have anything to do with it, even though I was kind of already forging a similar path where I was like, I don't want to hit my kid. Like, I like my kid. I'm like, why would I want to hit him? Like, I don't even like yelling at him, although I will do that. So have you guys had any experiences like that with peaceful parents or people that believe in spanking and, badger you or stuff?
Well, it's funny because you guys used the term peaceful parenting. I didn't even realize that was a term. I just didn't want to hit my kid. That was my whole thing. I didn't even know that was a whole movement or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple times I don't go around online talking about don't hit your kids per se, but I have. I wrote about it, and what was funny about that article is that within the article, I wrote every defense as to why you should hit kids. And I said, I know what they're going to say. And they're going to say all these things. And within the comments, they all said the same thing. I was like, I literally wrote it in here. You guys are using the same exact defense. Because there's only a handful of defenses or responses that people try to use against you. So, but that stuff, honestly, that stuff doesn't bother me. I know that I made the right move. I know I'm advocating for the right thing. I just feel, part of me feels bad for the adults who believe that they're different, that they needed to get their ass beat by their dad or by their mom, right? That it made them better somehow magically through belt osmosis or something like that. To being better people. And I think that's unfortunate that they believe that, because it's not true. Every child is different. Some children are more difficult than others, right? But you just handle it differently. That's all. You pointed to yourself.
Oh, very difficult. Very.
See, he deserved it, though. We can all agree on that.
Yeah, that's it. But if you think of it like this, children respond to their environment. That's human beings respond, but especially children. Children have no life experience, and they're just responding to things, right? So they see something shiny, they're just responding to the shiny thing, and they're running towards it. right? They can't see around the corner like adults can, right? Which is why the younger they are, the more impulsive they are. So we're supposed to be there to say, hey, there's a thing coming, and remind them of that, but we can't hit it out of them. They literally can't see that thing coming around the corner, which is why when they go and take from the cookie jar, we know it's them because we see the trail of cookies leading to their room, right? They don't see that part, right? But you can't be surprised that they're doing something. Like, you can respond to it with some sort of lesson and saying, now you can't get cookies for the rest of the week because you took. So that's a lesson. You don't have to beat the crumbs out of them, right? Right. That you just want to get, now they'll grow up and be afraid of chocolate chip cookies. But I actually wanted to talk a little bit about what you said, the environment in your home. I got married to my wife 4 years ago. And I have that same feeling, if she's having a stressful day, I know this, and I don't care what she says. I know that she's not telling me the truth if she says it's fine. Right. So I don't pester her, but I routinely check up, like, you sure you're all right? I do that so she can feel comfortable telling me whatever is going on. And maybe it's my wife, or maybe other people's wives are like this, but sometimes people don't feel like they don't want to burden you with whatever is bothering them, but they don't realize, like, you're bringing the energy down in here, man. Like, whatever's going on, talk about it. So just clear the air so we can kind of go back to normal. And I've had to see that where they're miserable trying to hide it. They're not doing a good job at hiding it, and they're not talking about it. So it just lingers for hours, days, however long, until that person finally talks about it. And what you don't want is for them to explode on you with whatever the issue is. So sometimes it's work with her. It might be me. And I try to be calm and available and tell her, like, it's all right if we talk about these things.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that's a way to lower whatever angst is going on, whether it's about me or not. I think that's a good way to actually, like, address the problem.
Yeah. I think a lot of what we're getting at from different angles here, how I would phrase it, I guess, from my own thinking on this and sort of development over time, is that I feel like we have sort of lost touch with what real masculinity looks like in both being a husband and being a father. And I was raised by, I guess, like the kind of generation that sort of then my generation said, well, that's toxic masculinity, right? Where the dads were very aggressive and very just kind of like laying down the law and things like that with both child and wife. And I was very, like I said, I came from the left, so I was very influenced by like feminist ideas. And I thought that to be a good man meant that I had to be incredibly gentle and soft and considerate and very unintentionally passive. And by passive, I mean, like, not that I wasn't paying attention, but that, like, I didn't want to lead. Or I thought the way to lead was, like, I needed to ask my wife, it's good to ask your wife questions, but there's asking your wife questions because you're getting input to then act upon, versus asking your wife questions because, like, you're kind of putting the problem solving on her all the time instead of trying to kind of take charge in a positive way. And every relationship's going to be different. There's going to be different divisions of labor, of discipline and household duties, even, vocationally. But I think in general, for how to be a good husband and how to be a good father, we have to reclaim like this a more what I would call, like, I guess, more biblical view of masculinity, or more traditional view or whatever, if you're not a Christian, where being a man is not about being like aggressive in a sort of like, I don't know, toxic way or domineering way, but like something about like the term peaceful parenting, I kind of shy away from that and I don't know that there is a right term for the type of parenting I have, but like, I don't want to hit my kids, but that doesn't mean that my response to my kids is going to be nice, right? Like, if my 10-year-old son disrespects my wife, his mother, and talks back to her. Now, like, 5 years ago, if something like that happened, I'd be like, "Hey, can you please stop doing that? That's really rude, and you should." And now it's more like a cut it out. Like, nope, we're not going to do that, right? And taking him out of the room and being not like, not trying to like intimidate him, but just kind of like trying to show that like there's some behaviors that like there's zero tolerance for, and kind of like modeling for him that like part of being a man is that you stick up for your wife. You don't let people talk to your wife a certain way, and that you respond with a certain like decisiveness, a certain firmness. And, I think that's tough. I feel like a lot of people from my generation, they sort of they struggle with this because, like, for me, at least personally, and I love my dad. I have a good relationship with him, but he was sort of like one of the dads where it was like hands off and doesn't do anything till there's a problem. Then there's a problem, he cracks the hammer down. So some of it is like people have mixed feelings about what masculinity is because of their own personal experiences or what the culture teaches them, and some of it is just like learning to be more proactive. I like the way you said it, Tyler, but like kind of setting the energy. I think it was you said it, like setting the energy in your house.
Not me.
Was that you? Okay, yeah. One of you said that, and I think that's kind of like it's about being proactive as a husband and a father. And to some extent, like when your kids are acting up, sometimes that's going to be just normal kid behavior. But if there's a pattern, it might be because you need to take stock and like wonder, like, well, am I maybe setting a bad expectation or a bad pattern or bad energy in the house that then my kids are picking up on? So I think kind of trying to rediscover what like a real masculinity is a big part of this equation.
Let me make a comment on that because I think that's great. You're not only parenting your kids, you are hopefully showing them what a man for us is, but what a loving relationship is with their. So you're disciplined to your child for the way that they speak to their mother. One, that's the mother respect, but it's also like, here's how you deal when you have a loving relationship. And so a lot of that is, we've had some mixed failed marriages in this group, it looks like, except for Jacob. So congratulations for him. But, we're all on the path of making the corrections and doing it right. And you still have kids to show that this is something that how you behave. And the manly stuff is fascinating. My dad never spanked me. And he was a big guy, like 6'3". And mom would be like, when he gets home, she's going to really lay into you, because she was the spanker. And I never remember him spanking me, but always being worried that he would, but not because I feared him, but because I didn't want to, I'm disappointed in my dad. It's so unique. So, there's that respect thing that you do lose. I lost it and I love my parents, and I'm not going to, whatever. But I did lose respect for the way that my mom would spank me. So then, get a certain age, you start grabbing onto the spoon or whatever she's using. And then, there's a tug of war, and then she's like, no TV. And I was suddenly like, oh, wait, well, spank me again. I want this, you discipline me the way I really don't like it. But that manly stuff, because the first without breaking into too much here, controlling, mom was, kind of in control of the house. Dad still had his points. And then I get married the first time, and she was more the control type. So I just let it go, right? You just kind of like give up your whatever. And I realized with my marriage now, which has been 13 years, is when I take charge on, certain things, do the manly stuff, build stuff, whatever it is, it impresses her, and she likes that. And so there is this give and take that you do. And sometimes it's division of labor where you're doing your different things. But there is still something about being a man, one, standing up for yourself, standing up for your family, that my wife really, really likes. And our relationship seems to go smoother when I pull up my bootstraps and I'm like doing what I'm supposed to do. And then the kids respect you. And, this whole thing is fascinating because my son's going to get married in July. And and great guy, but he's more on the, like taking charge, which is perfectly fine. So my advice to him is a little bit like, hey, don't be so much, let her participate. Has to be a community thing. You can still be this hierarchy in the man and in the house, but you've got, and she's, she puts her foot forward as well, but there's, some little give and take that must be done. But I am, anyway, that's kind of my point on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. We're talking about masculinity and toxic masculinity. I got a funny story that kind of helped shape my view of masculinity, and it deals with alcohol of all things. So years ago, probably in my early 30s, and I was out drinking with some friends. We were just kind of out at a bar, and I decided I wanted a vodka drink, but I wasn't very familiar with all the different cocktails and whatnot. And so I asked the waitress, I was like, hey, can you give me a vodka drink? I don't really know what goes well with it. I don't have any preference necessarily, but just surprise me or whatever. And she was like, okay, I got something for you. So she comes back, she brings this drink. I get it up and I'm getting ready to put it to my lips. And my friend, he's with me and he looks at me and he's like, dude, are you on your period? I was like, what? And he was like, he's like, are you on the rag? And I was like, what are you talking about? I was drinking a vodka and cranberry, which apparently for my group of guys was a girl drink.
That's my wife's favorite drink.
And so I was like,
were you on the rag?
Right. And so I was like, okay. And so then I called the waitress back over and I was kind of playfully giving her a hard time. And I was like, you get me in trouble with my guys here. And I was like, can you find me some other drink here? And she's like, she laughs and she's like, sure. So she comes back with, I think a vodka and lemonade. And then my friends respected me, of course. So I tell that story to a coworker and he kind of laughed at me. And he's like, man, he goes, when I was in college, there was a dude. And he said, this dude was huge. And he was like just one of those big guys that everybody would just be afraid of just by looking at him because he looked burly and huge and just kind of scary and whatnot. And he was like, but he was actually a super nice guy. And he said, but the most interesting thing about him was that he would drink girly drinks. Like that's just what he liked. And he said other guys would, his buddies would give him a hard time and he'd be like, I don't care. And he was just like, he said, you can be the kind of guy that drinks what your friends tell you, or you can be the kind of guy that's like, I'll drink what I want. And I was like, damn. I was like, now that you put it that way, and so it really like, I don't want to say that it shaped all of my masculinity. Some of it already was there and present. It just kind of helped me realize that there were a lot of decisions that I would be making as a man. And the ultimate end is you need to be able to deal with the consequences, whatever it is, right? Maybe you make a decision and the event or whatever you're doing turns out bad, right? Like whatever, maybe your friends make fun of you, whatever the case may be. But part of being a man is not just making decisions, but living with and dealing with the consequences, good or bad, from those decisions, and mostly standing tall. Of course, obviously, if you've made an error and you owe somebody an apology, then, do what's appropriate. But outside of those circumstances, stand tall, chin up, and say, okay, and this is what I teach my son. I tell him actively, I'm like, don't do things that you don't want other people to know about. Like, if you don't want me to know about it, if you don't want your mommy to know about it, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Always be willing to say, yes, I did this. Kind of go back to the Adam's conversation about the phone. I don't say anything that I wouldn't either probably tell my wife on my own accord, or would not be embarrassed if she found out on the side, through some happenstance. So I think the conversation about masculinity that needs to happen in this society is, like, hey, stand up for yourself when you make a decision and, do the right thing. Maybe it's apologize. Maybe it's just have a laugh at your buddies when they're giving you a hard time.
No, I think it's 100% correct. Like, there's people associate masculinity and femininity with these sort of outward like stereotypes and physical markers, like what you drink or what you do or what your hobbies are or what your interests are. And I think, and there's like overlap between these things, but I think it's much more what you said. Like, it's like character traits that are like more intangible. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like taking accountability and leadership like, again, women, I think, express these things too, but in slightly different ways. I mean, I think like the biggest thing for me, like as a man, is like uh, being able to hold people to account when they make a mistake, but holding yourself accountable to the same degree.
Mhm.
Like and I'm not perfect at this yet. But like one of the things we do in our household is that like we do have rules for the kids. We have rules for the adults too. And we have consequences for the adults if we break one of our rules.
Mhm.
Like and I've been really bad at this to the point where I'm like, it's embarrassingly bad. But I set a rule with my kids, and I said, because I'm, like anyone, because I'm on social media and I podcast, I can be on my phone too much, and so it's like, hey, at designated times when I'm home from work and I'm not doing a show or anything, like I'm in the family room, I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to be pulling it out, and if I do, for like non-emergency, non-phone call thing, and you guys catch me, then I owe you guys ice cream. And I set that rule thinking that it would be easy to follow, and then 5 ice cream trips later over the summer, and I was like, man, I needed to pick a different consequence than this. but like following through on that, not only does it then like hold you to account, but like it kind of that's parenting is much more about like that kind of leadership and that consistency and kind of you know I think that that's closer to approximating the kind of masculinity we're talking about, not if what kind of drinks you like or what kind of
Right.
like my biggest, thing is like, I like I like chick flicks, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. Like when I have like a, evening with my wife and the kids are in bed early, and she wants to pick out like a more feminine show or movie to watch. Like we're going through and watching Bridgerton right now, which
Mhm.
is sometimes seen as more of like a, a show. Like I don't know, I enjoy it. I don't care.
Right.
Yeah. If I can add, and similar to his story, I grew up um, being more passive. How I handled things, especially as a kid, I was more passive. Um, I grew up with my mom and my sister, so I was especially passive when it came to women. Um, I think in my early 20s, I was incredibly passive until I had enough, and then I would explode. So I was always very quiet, and I have stories about cursing out coworkers because they take you being quiet and nice as a weakness.
Right.
And then one day I curse them out, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, Adam, how you doing?" Like, and then they know that you're capable of being like a little bit crazy, and then they all of a sudden they kind of back off. Um, all those things were kind of unhealthy. Um, and what I learned over time is, it came with confidence because I low confidence throughout most of my life. But when I started really developing that confidence in my early 30s and being sure about myself, it makes it so much easier to stand up for yourself and set boundaries and tell people, no, I don't care. I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
You know, and when I say this with all love, I say that to my mom. Don't do this. I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
I set boundaries with her, and if she violates those boundaries, then I say, if you do this, I'm going to do this. And it's because I don't accept certain things. So
Mhm.
do not do this. I tell anybody that. My son that, my wife that. I have personal boundaries, and if I tell you those boundaries, I'm going to enforce those boundaries. You can only do that with a level of confidence.
Yeah.
Um, and this is the type of thing that I've wanted to explain to my son is that you should not be afraid to enforce your boundaries. Whatever you're comfortable with, stay within that. Um, and it does not matter what these other people say. And there are people who are going to absolutely hate you because you're enforcing it, and that's their problem, not yours.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
But add a really quick thing to that.
yeah,
Not only your boundaries, but your wife's boundaries. I
yeah,
learned that the hard way with my parents, and other people too, but especially with my parents and my wife, that like, especially from a Christian perspective where it says like, you got to treat your wife like she's your own flesh. So like her boundaries, I guess like within reason, like if your wife has boundaries that are literally not reasonable, then talk about that. But like most of the time, it's probably going to be reasonable boundaries, and you need to enforce those and respect those. And like, even if you don't necessarily like, my wife is very concerned about keeping our kids' pictures off social media. I have that concern too. I don't feel as strongly as her about it, and because I used to be more passive and conflict avoidant, I wouldn't, I'd be like, "Oh, come on, like I don't want to get into this with them. It's going to cause drama." And I had to learn to be like, "Nope, like that's me. That is an example of failing to be a husband and a father and to lead, and understanding that like just because it's not something that's a big deal to me, if it's a big deal to her, and she has good reasons to, have that be a big deal for her, and I'm not enforcing that boundary, not only is that hurting our relationship, but when the kids are old enough to kind of model that, that's going to have trickle down effects in terms of how they listen to the boundaries we set for them.
Mhm.
And that's going to have detrimental effects for your relationship with your spouse because, like, I mean, what are you communicating to your wife at that point when you tell her that like this boundary you have isn't important for me to enforce? That is a dangerous road to head down. And you as husbands, we need to make sure our wives feel safe as much as within our power to make them feel safe, especially when it's a simple thing. And it's like like we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like it's like the biggest like meta piece of advice for men is like be comfortable being uncomfortable, even if that means having those hard conversations with other family members to be like, hey, like, this thing you're doing, that's not going to work for us. I know for some people, especially for me, that was a hard hurdle to get over.
Yeah. Tyler, jump in anytime. You're awful quiet there, bud.
Oh, just learning.
Oh, okay. All right. He's the one with the adult children, and he's going to learn just in case he decides to adopt or have
things change. I mean, Adam said he had a 20-year-old, so
that's right.
Things change. Do you have any younger ones or just?
Just the one son.
Okay, I mean, so life's a little different at 20, right? Your advice, all this kind of thing. Like I said, that's where I think you're actually switching from just being a parent to now you're much more a role model in a sense. Like, here, you're going to get married. Well, can I give my son advice if I'm just a complete, worthless person as far as in this marriage? I've got to be able to stand in front of him and to give him some advice that he's actually going to take it, maybe at some point listen to. So I think that's an important aspect. And once again, being this figure in your family. And I love the idea of, it's out there. We all know it about what Jacob just said about boundaries with the spouse. In-laws, that's a tough one. And so what do you do with these situations? And, this is where you being on the and maybe hating both sides of your family works out much better for a spouse. I actually love all mine, but there's still boundaries that you've got to take. And my wife has such a different upbringing than I did. Broken family, youngest of 4 sisters, just all kicked out of her house when she was 15 years old because, that's how the discipline went. Whereas I'm, my parents are still together, 2 older sisters, kind of the dominant female version in my house as well. And so you've got to play off of these things and understand where they're coming from. And also she's got to understand where you're coming from. And to make it work out. And the ultimate thing, though, is when you go to their house or they post your kids' pictures or whatever, you're in this house with your spouse. And so when everything's gone, you've got to have this reality of how do we make our relationship work? And if you're not standing up from those pivotal times where like, your mom's running over us or, whatever it is, it's going to break down hard at home. I mean, that's something that she or he can really look at, to specifically. I'm sure we've all had it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think to add on, this is where communication really becomes super important because there will be some things I could name you some of the things that my wife is not going to be terribly flexible on. Right. But then there are other things where it's like, this is maybe might call it a soft boundary, right? Where it's like she would prefer it, but if it happens every so often, she probably, or maybe more than a little bit every so often, she's probably not going to be too terribly upset about it, right? And so, like, communicating and finding out what are the hard boundaries. So, just as for humor's sake, but also for seriousness, my wife, I joke and I tell people, I'm like, there are 2 times when I don't make any jokes and I get the hell out of the way: when she's hungry and when she's tired.
Hmm.
Because, like, my running joke is I was like, you want to turn an Asian woman into Godzilla? That's going to be it for my wife. Like, just, don't mess with her. Get, like, when she says, she'll text me and she'll be like, I'm coming home, I'm really hungry. I'm like, go get some food. Right. And it's not like oh my God, I gotta kowtow to my wife. It's just like, these are some of the things that I know that are really serious in terms of boundaries and for her. Right. But there are other things that are, maybe less comical per se, that everybody has to work out, and I'll have my boundaries and some things where, maybe I'm just like, yeah, I'd prefer it, but if it happens, whatever. And other things where I'm like, no, unacceptable. End of story. Right. So I think communication is huge in that. So men out there, talk to your wives, not at them, talk to them, with them. So
Yeah. If I can add, with the confidence I was able to gain with holding my own boundaries, because keep in mind, I grew up with my mom, and my sister. I didn't know that you could talk to women in a particular way. And so the thing that I learned was, no, they're human beings, and I get to hold them accountable too. And there's a level of honesty that I think we tell men not to have when it comes to their spouses. That they're just these perfect angels who never mess up. And if they do something that pisses you off, or they do something wrong, you're not allowed to point that out, right? And of course, the phrase "happy wife, happy life," right? You being miserable is perfectly fine. Her being happy is the primary concern, right? That is incredibly detrimental to relationships. Because I'll tell you this, and my wife, if she was on here, she'd be like, yep, that's absolutely true. When I gained that confidence, I started treating everyone exactly the same way. If I love you, I'm going to tell you the truth. Like, I'm just going to tell you the truth. And so that the trope of, if she says, does this make me look fat, or is this dress ugly? Just lie. No, you look fat in that, or you look ugly. Why am I going to lie to you? Like, that means that I don't love you. And so there's a level of honesty that I started expressing years ago, but this is like my relationship with my wife. We've been together for 6 years now. This was the first relationship where I was just 100% honest with, because we were both comfortable with being honest with each other. And I encourage her to be honest with me. The story I always tell, this might be like a couple of years ago, I threw out these pair of pants that I used to wear all the time. And she's like, oh, I'm so glad you threw those out. I was like, wait, why? She's like, oh, they didn't look that good on you. I was like, wait a minute. You let me wear those ugly pants this entire time. You never told me that they look ugly. I trust you more than I trust me.
Right.
Like, you need to tell me that stuff. And I was telling her, like, tell me it's ugly, because I'm walking around. I can't see me from the outside. So you need to tell me from the outside that this does not look good on me. And I will be like, it's gone. 2 seconds. I'm not even going to fight you on that.
Yeah.
Right. Because I expect that level of honesty. And so when you start treating people with pure honesty, where you don't lie to them, because lying to people is not a display of love. I'm honest with my wife. I call her on her stuff. If she's acting a particular way, I'm like, you're acting ridiculous. And she'll come back to me. She's like, you know what? Yeah, I was. Because she's being honest too. She's like, yeah, I'm glad. But she'll tell me the same thing. I'm glad you call me out on my stuff. Like, if she's being hysterical and she's saying, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
If you're an author, so you're probably good with words. So I doubt when she says, does this dress make me look fat? You say, no, the fat makes you look fat. I'm sure you come up with a better way to do it than that. But yes, don't lie. And then maybe she just doesn't ask you the question anymore.
Well, I think there's something to this also where like
Yeah.
because I've had to learn this myself that like if you're hesitant to be honest with your wife, one reason that might be is because you subconsciously know that your wife doesn't feel safe and comfortable with you to the point where like you're afraid if you are honest or you push back or you criticize that like she's not going to receive it well. And I'm not saying it's the only reason, but a reason she might not receive it well might be like if you don't have that kind of solid foundation of trust and communication. So
Yeah.
yeah, like if you don't have that, and then all of a sudden out of the blue one day when you're not loving your wife the way you should, you start criticizing her, yeah, she's probably not going to take it very well. But that level of honesty is something that you have to cultivate, and it has to be both ways. It
Mhm.
has to be a two-way street, and she has to kind of know that like if I criticize her, it's not like I have to do all this sort of like I have to do it half-assed or be super like gentle and like soft about it or like do all these like prefaces like honey, I love you. I don't want to be rude, but like if you feel I need to do all that, that's probably because you like know that like you're not. And again, I'm not like saying disclaimer, like 99% of everything I'm saying here is stuff that like I'm saying to other people as much as I'm saying it, or probably I'm saying it even more to myself as I
Same.
continue to grow in these
Yeah.
areas because I've had to learn to like love my wife better and even like going through because like we had like a rough patch and I went through personal counseling. We've gone through some counseling with our pastor in our church, and it's like I used to be frustrated and be like, I feel like I can't ever say anything without it that's disagreeing with her and she doesn't take it badly. And it's like, well, why is that? Look into it. And I think it's kind of like if you a really good piece of advice, by the way, is that, obviously it's better if you start things out on a better foundation. But if it's never too late to fix that. But if you were at a place where like you started out wrong and then you have to fix it, you need to kind of like have people in your life who can speak into your marriage, who can kind of help you with that because it, it it's going to have to be something that happens organically over time. Where I'm at now compared to 2 years ago is a lot different where the dynamics in our relationship are healthier and I'm able to kind of do a more what you're kind of talking about, Adam, in a way where my wife can be receptive of it. But like if you're not serving your wife and then you come and criticize her,
Mhm.
that's going to go a whole different way
Mm-hmm.
than if you're actually checking those boxes as a husband and a father like you should be.
Absolutely. I'll tell you guys a brief story real quick. Years ago, my wife was doing some real estate stuff, and I don't want to try to get into the details and bog it down, but basically, she was not a real estate agent. She was trying to do something where the thing that she was trying to do kind of rode the fine line between acting like a real estate agent and not acting like a real estate agent. And she stepped over it just a little bit unintentionally, and she got in trouble. Somebody turned her in. She got fined. I was with her through the whole thing. I dug into the law, was trying to find any way where we could, defend her. And unfortunately, she just got busted. That was the end of it. But at the end of it, once we once we paid the money for the fine, she came to me and she was like, "I'm really glad that you didn't, give me a hard time. You didn't say, oh, you should have known better. You just like, all right, let's figure this out." And the furthest of any kind of, anything that could be construed as criticism that I had said was, I guess we won't do that again. And it was interesting because like, I will frequently phrase things as a we, even though I had nothing to do with it because I don't do real estate. Like I'm just the help sometimes. And so, but I like to phrase things as we because I tell my family, I'm like, we are a home team. I stole that from Rocky, but I'm like, we're a home team. We win together, we lose together. Because if I lose, like if I lost my job, we're all going to hurt. Even if I was the dumb one, I did something dumb and lost the job, it's still going to hurt all of us. It's going to impact. So we are winning together, we are losing together. And, I think it's more important to really set that foundation of I'm definitely by your side because there will come a time, like you said, Jacob, when you need to have a frank conversation. And I think it's going to be easier when they feel confident to have that conversation, when your spouse feels confident to have the conversation with you, because, you weren't just not there and then all of a sudden want to dive into the criticism.
Spoken like a
Yeah.
man without a prenup.
Oh gosh.
Well, if I could add, I speak the same way, or more often I do too. But I believe the same exact thing. Like, we're a team, and I try to tell my wife that.
Yeah.
But there is definitely something about, there's no "I told you so's." Like, I don't care about that. And she might sometimes come to me because we're having a discussion. I'm like, this is what you should do. And she'll eventually do it. And she's like, you know what? You were right about that. I was like, I know, but it's all good. Like, you did it. So you're good now, right? Like, I'm not here to rub it in your face because like, we're one. Like, I don't get any pleasure being right about this particular thing. I just want us to be good. Are you good? Because if you're good, I'm good. We're all good. So in the same way, when we have a disagreement, the objective for me isn't to win the argument. It's to resolve whatever the problem is. So we can go back to being good and friends and hanging out. I don't take any pleasure in any of that stuff. But like you said before, the foundation for us is that we're friends first. Like, we were literally friends. We were becoming friends, and then it turned into a romantic relationship. So I always see her as my friend. I would never do something intentionally to hurt her. And if I do hurt her, I apologize because she's my friend. I don't want to argue with my friend. I don't want to talk negatively about my friend.
Yeah.
And I take those things very seriously. So my approach is that my wife is my friend, and I just want to make sure that our friendship remains intact.
Yeah.
And the same level of I didn't say criticism and stuff like that. Whatever I might dish, I expect her to dish back to me. And I can take that stuff. So another, like, just small piece of advice: have these discussions when you're not in a given moment, when everything is cool. That's when you talk about this stuff. Not in the heat of anything. Like, I tell my wife, like, listen, I give you permission to do this. She's like, all right, but if I tell you this, I don't want you, I'm telling you right now, if I say something, say, Adam, you gave me permission to do this thing.
Right.
Right? I'm telling you right now, you're good to do that. I won't say anything back to you about that. I won't stop you. So, like, all that, these are conversations that I'm always talking to my wife. So these are conversations you're having on just a normal day. Nothing is happening. And that's the way you should proceed. Don't have these hard conversations in the middle of emotions, because they'll never come out right.
Yeah. Well, I like how you brought up the friendship part, because I think that we often don't think about how our marriages, like your wife is like the most unique relationship you're ever going to have, because one, it's the one that, I mean, not to, like, obviously not including divorce, it's the relationship that outside of divorce and death, like, that's constant, right? Like, your kids are going to grow up and have their own families, not be living with you. So that relationship, it's always there, but it's going to kind of change. But your wife, you're going to grow old with her, and she's always going to be with you. But also, like, that relationship has, like, different aspects to it, because you're friends, your partners, and your lovers. And a lot of times, if your marriage is in a tough spot, maybe it's more than one, but there's probably, at least one of those aspects where like, you're not being a good friend to her, you're not being a good lover, or you're not being a good, partner. And, and oftentimes, marriage, you're going to have one area where you guys excel, one where you're probably okay, and one where you struggle, right? Like, my wife and I, we were great as friends. We started out as friends. We've always been friends. We joke with each other. Like, when I see something funny, the first person, like, if it's on my phone, like a meme, the first person I want to share it with is my wife. She's my best friend. She's been my friend going back to high school. We were high school sweethearts. We developed romantically, and we became, lovers. And so, like, the the love aspect of our relationship has always been strong too. But we haven't always been good partners because sometimes we've had just different visions on how to handle finances, on how to handle parenting, etc. And so I've had to learn. We've had to grow into being better partners when it comes. Like if my wife and I are fighting, 9 out of 10 times it's because like it's almost like a comedy skit watching us doing a house project together. Like when we got chickens and we're building a coop together, that was like one of the most stressful things we ever did because we just like we don't work well together on those kinds of things because we just have different ways of tackling problems. Like I'm very much I step back, I analyze it, I make a plan, I know what I'm doing ahead of time, I know I have all the tools I need. My wife is kind of like I'm going to jump right into it and figure it out as I do it. So we're like diametrically opposed in terms of how we solve problems and how we approach things. And so that has caused sometimes the day-to-day tensions and whatnot. So we've had to learn over time to grow in that like partnership level.
I feel you, bro, because I married an industrial engineer. They're basically the people that come in and tell you how you should be doing all your processes. So, and I'm very headstrong, and like when I go tackle the yard or a project, I'm like, it's got to be done this way. So yeah, we've butt some heads on some projects as well. Jacob, I know that you've got to get going here because I think you have a 9:30 podcast that you got to jump on. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
You want to give a final word or a final shout out or where people can find you or whatnot before you head on out?
Yeah, sure. This has been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to continuing these, getting to know everyone on the panel more. Yeah, you can find me, like I said, there on my little name tag at Biblical Anarchy on X. That's where I'm the most active. I am on Facebook and Instagram. I don't post there as often just because I don't have the time to put as much energy into those. Mm-hmm. But you go to at Biblical Anarchy or go to biblicalanarchypodcast.com and you'll find all my episodes and whatnot. I will also plug the Libertarian Christian Institute is doing our end of the year fundraiser. So every dollar that you donate to LCI is matched now till the end of the year. So if you want to, support the mission of promoting the ideas of liberty and free market and human flourishing from the Christian worldview, then yeah, go to libertarianchristians.com and every dollar helps, gets us. We've every year we've done these kind of matching fundraisers, and each year we've grown and been able to go and do more things and go out to more events. And so just really appreciate the support we've had from everyone. Appreciate you, DL, for having me on and organizing this. I think this was great, and I look forward to continuing to do them.
Awesome. I look forward to it as well, sir. And good luck on your next show here.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Alrighty, gentlemen. We're at 9:30, and for right now, we'll just we'll kind of cut it short. And I don't know how to make the screens like more equal, so bear with me that I'm bigger.
You're the host.
It's my show anyway, so I guess I get to be bigger. Whatever. Finally, I'm bigger. I'm the biggest one in the room. That never happens. So anyway, final words, guys. On any final thoughts that you guys have regarding anything that we talked about or anything that you think you just want to leave people with.
Let me finish off from what we were just talking about. Two things.
Sure.
Friends. First of all, I totally agree with the friends idea. Matter of fact, bringing up Nick again, he was on with Tucker Carlson and he said, I hate it when men say my best friend is my wife. And so I excoriated him on a podcast. My wife is my best friend. And it's I could go and spend all my time with her, and when we're done here, that's what we're going to go do. And you need to have that, exactly what he said. So I think that's a misnomer, and it should be your best friend because you're going to treat your friend I think it's exactly what Jacob said: friend, partner, lover. You're going to treat them differently, but if you have that underlying friend situation, you're going to want to spend a lot of time with them, and they're going to be the person you talk about. The other thing was talking about my wife and I, some difficult times, and we went to therapy, counseling, and it was fascinating. We were just talking about this the other night, and she brought it up how we went to a few sessions and then quit. And she was telling me how, because we went in there and the therapist was all about scorekeeping and I was winning. And my wife did not like to hear that she was losing all these tit for tat things. And my idea at the time too was like, well, I don't really care. Okay, so there were mistakes or whatever. We're having problems, but we're past that. We're here to, how do we work and resolve these things going forward? So we dumped this lady, and we just kind of went, we haven't gone back, and we've really flourished in our relationship. But it was almost like a thing where we realize, you don't dig on the history. Let's worry about the past. As long as you are understanding that like I've said, you make mistakes. Now we're moving on from those. You learn from your past, and then we're going forward. Let's do that together. Let's figure out a way that we can resolve future conflicts. As long as you're always continually talking about, like, because I see this all the time. Parties are like, oh, we tried therapy and it didn't work. Or they want to go to some sort of co-parent counseling, and it's all about pointing the finger. They're not resolving future problems. And, all I can tell you with people, if you're going to go to therapy, fine, do it. I think can be very helpful, but make sure you're getting into something that you can both not have to look at your spouse and know that you had one up on them or that they had one up on you. I just don't think that's a healthy situation.
Right.
100%. I guess what I would add to the best friend, years ago, I've had a bunch of relationships. We've only been married for 4 years, together for 6. I never had a friend, like a real friendship, out of a girlfriend before. So if someone told me like my wife's my best friend, I would probably think like, oh, he's just saying that. Like, is that even possible? But I get it now. Like, I 100% get it. My wife and I, we got married in September. And so starting with our honeymoon, we traveled to Turkey. And every year in September, we go somewhere for 2 weeks alone. And we pick and choose where we want to go, and we bounce around and we travel. And I think we've been to together 10 countries or something to that effect. And we have a great time. Now we have a pattern where we bounce around for the first week, and then the last week we stay put by a beach or wherever we decide, and we stay there together, and we can go have dinner or do hookah or whatever we want to do, just together, no traveling, in a place that's nice and romantic and comfortable, and no phone, none of that. We just completely decompress. And that's what we look forward to every single year. Spending alone time with my wife. And I think to myself, like, I can't imagine like having the opposite of that. Like, oh, I gotta go travel with my wife. Oh, I look forward to it. It's my favorite thing to do. I look forward to bringing my wife someplace new and watching her face experience something for the first time. So I think it's incredibly important. You have to have that foundation of a friendship. Then you can talk to each other. You can communicate because you want to talk. You want to communicate. And actually, I'll add to what he was saying about scorekeeping. I don't do that with my wife at all. I don't care about that whatsoever, because it's counterproductive. Mm-hmm. Do you want to resolve the problem, or do you want to be right? I think that's a Dr. Phil saying. Like, you can be right or you can be happy. Like, which one do you want to be?
Right.
So for me, it was never about being right. It's never about, I'm always right about this. And it's never for me to do the you always do kind of thing.
Absolutes.
Well. The absolutes, right? It's, what's the issue? Let's talk about it. Let's resolve it, right? And obviously you get frustrated or whatever it might be. But for me, when she's like, okay, you know what? I did the thing that you said to do. You were right. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. You're good now, right? Cool. Let's move forward. Like, I'm always just like, that's in the past. Let's move forward. I don't resurrect the past. So yeah, I think doing that whole scorekeeping thing. That's a recipe
Yeah.
for disaster. No one likes that.
Right.
I can't imagine someone who's like, "Oh, I'm glad you bring up old stuff."
Yeah.
Like,
That's
no one likes
weird
that
that a
whatsoever.
counselor would do it. I was kind of like, what? Because like if you just said like I used to do that when I was younger, like okay, yeah, because like a lot of people do, right? Like it's very common.
Mhm.
And I know that I'm not quite notorious for scorekeeping so much, but how do you describe it? I have this tendency to want balance. So it's like if I do something to you, well, if I do something, nice to you, I kind of expect in general over time that you do the same. But if you say like, well, and that generally works out fairly well. Where it breaks down is if you don't do something and then you expect somebody else won't do that thing, and then you try to hold them accountable, not because what they did was actually wrong, but because in a sense it is kind of scorekeeping like, well, I don't do that, so you shouldn't do that, which I think is a very I think it's very common. And even if it's not, it's something that I do. So if you're a man out there and listening, I'm telling you, stop doing that. And it's a lot harder than it sounds, and I still work on, trying not to like, hey, I didn't do that. So why are you doing that to me? It really should be, actually, this is not appropriate. Let's talk about this. I don't like this, not just because, this tally in a sense that's going on. So it's something I struggle with. And I work actively to try not to do that. And I do it everywhere. And and Tyler probably knows because he's seen me. I'm very argumentative, probably because I'm a libertarian. I don't really know if that's the driving point, but I'm an argumentative person and I'll kind of like retain those. And so it does not work out in the way that you would think, because like in our mind, we want to be like, well, I'll tell them that I didn't do this to them and they'll just stop doing it. And that's not really how it works. So. All right, gentlemen. I think we're coming to a close here. I really appreciate having all three of you guys on. I know Jacob had to leave. I think this was a great conversation. I really look forward to conversations that we get into in the future. And I think as we warm up together, the show will become more humorous, maybe more solemn. Whatever the conversation is about. And then I know that Adam, you said you won't always necessarily be able to be on. Just depends on your schedule. There are a couple of other dads who I know and feel have a good sense about them. I'm talking to them, so maybe we'll be able to rotate out dads from time to time and just have maybe a slightly different panel. But I think this was a good conversation, just to kind of kick off a pilot, if you will. So thank you guys so much for
Yeah.
joining.
My pleasure.
All right, I'm going to put you guys backstage. I'm going to close the show. If you guys got to go, that's fine. If you want to stick around and chit chat after, that's fine as well too. But if you stick around, at least mute your mic because it'll catch hot. So if you're like, "Rah, that DL is so dumb," they'll catch it.
Right.
So,
Thanks.
All right.
all right, gentlemen, have a good one. All right, folks, there you have it. That was the show. Hope you found it informative and inspiring. Make sure that you come back because this is the pilot episode. We still got to, we got to learn each other. We've got to kind of get to know each other. And as we do, I think this show will warm up. And I think there's going to be some really, really amazing conversations. Tonight was a great conversation, but I think it's only going to get better from here. And I really look forward to it. Whether you're watching me live right now, or, maybe you're watching me later, at some point in the future, come back, drop a comment in. Let me know what your thoughts are. Did we miss something? Do we need to offer a correction? Maybe you just want to, talk to one of us and say, hey, I think what you said on this one point was really great, to any one of the members of the panel. We're all ears. But with that, I'm going to be out. I will see you guys tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. for Larry Sharp. He's running for governor in New York. That's going to be an awesome conversation. So I will see you then. Have a good one. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.